I don't know. I got it set up if he wants to. Hello, Hamid. How are you? Unmute.
I can speak now.
There we go. There we go. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make you the co-host, okay?
Yeah, but before we start, I think it may be easier for you if you're going to do the video. Why not just start with the video and then switch it over to me, and then I can take it from there. That way, there's no confusion between me giving it to you and all that.
You have made our lives so much simpler. Yes. Okay. We'll do that. I'll just introduce the class. Well, you can introduce the class and then we'll share the video and then I'll make you co-host.
Sure, sure.
Okay. That way we can do a.
So here's the step. I'm going to introduce the class. We're going to start with the video.
Okay.
And then you make me the co-host and I will start taking from there.
Fantastic. That's what we'll do. Okay, I got to take a quick break before we get started, so I'll be back in a second.
Okay. There's nobody there except one dog, Ian.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna join. I'll be waiting when she comes back. She can let me know.
How are you feeling, Hamid?
I am feeling wonderful. Hey, the Gampa looks pretty empty, but it says Geisha Gaelic at the bottom.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that's Chris's doing.
Hi, Jeevan.
Got Jeevan here. And we have a new audio visual helper tonight. Orlando is
Oh, wow.
in the house tonight helping us out.
Wonderful,
New
wonderful.
Dharma DJ, he says.
I like that title, Dharma DJ. Well, we have some time. People will join in. There we go. Patty just joined. It's beautiful weather outside.
Yeah,
Not sure how many people
it is. We'll
want to
see.
come in here, you know.
And time change, so we've got that extra daylight. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's causing a lot of people a lot of headaches.
We'll see what we get tonight, but we're here.
Yeah, that's okay.
Hey, Patty. All right, we'll give it a few more minutes.
Yeah. Is anybody on YouTube, Lisa?
Hang on, I'll check. Let's see. We show one.
Good.
uh, Had another one roll into the Kadampa.
It's okay. Lisa, who taught the last class?
We had developing bodhicitta with Robbie. Robbie did the last class.
Oh, that was perfect segue to this class. Good.
Mhm. So we had 4 classes, and we just finished that last Monday. There was no break in between.
Ah, have 2 more minutes. Oh,
Yep.
we have CJ and John joining.
Yep, CJ and or John. CJ
Hi,
for sure.
CJ. She's a familiar face to me. Spent a couple of weeks there together.
We even had Venerable Kandala and Lamala participating yesterday. They told stories for the kids.
Yeah, I was on YouTube and I watched the whole thing. Yeah,
Yeah, it was a good service.
it's very nice. Very nice.
Okay, we can go ahead and start if you want to. Heyman,
Yes,
video
yeah,
going
I'll just
now.
do a quick introduction and then maybe we can start with the video. So anyways, good evening, everyone. And this is module 11, transforming problems. And so we're going to start with the video. And then after the video is about 26 minutes and a few seconds. So that will take away our first half an hour. And then for remaining time, I'll do a nice, like foundational, some foundational basic stuff that I want to talk about why transforming your problems and changing your mind is important. So we're gonna dive into that little some basic foundation for and lay the foundation out for you. So with that in mind, why don't we start first with the prostration and then we'll go into video. So just mentally, if you're sitting on the floor, if you want to get up and do your prostration, that's fine. If you're sitting in a chair, you can even do mental prostrations, but let's do 3 prostrations, okay? And I think most people sitting here are familiar with why we prostrate, but I'll just like to repeat sometimes that really you're respecting the teachings and the triple gem, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. It also humbles oneself. It develops good qualities and admiration. And of course, it's an optional. People don't have to, okay? But it's important. Well, hello, Linda and Brad. It's so good to see you. And so that's the prostration. So with that, I just want to again mention the fact that this will be 4 classes, and most of these classes today is the introductory with the video, but then in the next 3 classes we'll catch up on all the 8 verses of thought transformation is the gist of this particular class subject matter and why it's important. So with that, why don't we start with the video and then you can make me a co-host, Lisa, and then we'll go from there.
not sure what's going on here.
It's okay. Maybe it's duplicated. So
I told
get
you
out
that
of it.
reality,
There you go.
this horrible
I'm not sure
situation
what's
is
going
the
on
best
here.
opportunity for spiritual
It's
practice.
okay.
You
Maybe
might
it's
think they're
duplicated.
crazy, but
So
this is what the Buddha taught: how to transform problems into the path.
Stop sharing for just a minute. Okay. Okay, I think I got it. Hang on.
All right, let's just say you've been fired from your job of 5 years, or your husband or wife leaves you. There's been a tragedy in your country, any worst case scenario you can imagine. If someone came along and told you that in reality, this horrible situation is the best opportunity for spiritual practice, you might think they're crazy. But this is what the Buddha taught: how to transform problems into the path of enlightenment. It makes sense. The world is still full of war and poverty, and our minds are full of delusions like anger, jealousy, and attachment. Problems are constant. But we can learn to use these otherwise unfortunate circumstances as an opportunity to accelerate our spiritual growth. Using techniques based on loving kindness and compassion for others and ourselves, we can learn to face difficult situations with skill, wisdom, and humor, and literally transform problems into happiness.
Transforming suffering into the path to enlightenment is at the very heart of the Buddha's Mahayana teachings. But these thought transformation techniques are, in fact, very difficult to practice. When they were first taught, they were kept secret for that very reason, because of their difficulty. Thought transformation techniques are based in bodhicitta, and therefore it's essential when one receives these teachings to receive them with a mind imbued by bodhicitta, the attitude wishing to attain enlightenment as quickly as possible, in order to understand thought transformation correctly. Therefore, for that reason, generate in your mind now a strong intention to achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible in order to bring to enlightenment all other suffering mother sentient beings quickly.
So I assume everybody here has problems? Yeah. often when we have problems, we feel like we're the only people who have problems. But wouldn't you say everybody has problems? But our problems are worse than other people's, right? Isn't it? Definitely, 100% worse, yeah. So we should be the object of other people's sympathy and their compassion and their aid. And the way to transform our problems is to get them to stop doing all the nasty things they're doing towards us, right? That's not actually transforming our problem, that's throwing the problem at the other person, okay? Telling them that they're the source of our problem and believing it ourselves, that other people are the source of our problems, okay? When we have that view on life, you know, that I'm just this little old innocent, sweet, charming, wonderful, joyful person who doesn't mean harm to anybody, and yet all these mean, nasty, cruel, vicious, ununderstanding people cause me problems. We have to totally get out of this idea of blaming. Yeah. Because we're very much, I think, a country and a culture that likes to point the finger and blame. And, you know, you caused it, you did it, you're going to suffer, okay? If there's a problem, you know, finding somebody to blame means finding somebody that we can cause to suffer, thinking that when somebody else suffers, we're going to feel better afterwards, okay? I think that whole way of looking at life doesn't work, okay? Because it's not about finding one cause, because everything's interdependent and everybody contributes something, okay? And it's not about finding the cause so that we can punish somebody. Now, how do we work with problems? How do we transform problems? Okay. I think it depends on how we look at a situation, okay? First of all, how we define a problem. Because there could be some event going on with somebody else, and you can call it a problem, or you can call it an opportunity. And this is kind of the difference between whether we're looking at things in a worldly way or whether we're looking at them in a spiritual way, okay? Because in a worldly way, we label a situation a problem when our needs and wants aren't getting met. Isn't that kind of the definition of a problem for you? When your needs and wants aren't getting met, when your expectations aren't getting met, when your plans aren't happening, okay? So we have an idea of the situation, and what we're looking for is pleasure and happiness and getting our way and being right. Okay, that's kind of what our goal is. Yeah, our goal in a situation is my happiness. When the goal of my happiness, and preferably my happiness now rather than later, okay, when that goal is frustrated, we call that a problem. Okay? So, yeah, and that's our usual worldly way of looking at things, isn't it? Okay? Now, if we're spiritual practitioners, the goal of any situation is not my pleasure. Think about that one for a while. Can you imagine living your life where the goal is not your own pleasure and not your own happiness? Does that seem like something that's possible? Hello out there. If we're trying to practice a spiritual path, our goal in a situation is not my happiness. Our goal is to learn. Okay? Our goal is to learn about ourselves. Our goal is to learn about others. Our goal is to, through this learning, be able to purify our own mind and develop our own good qualities. Our goal is, through this learning, to be able to contribute to the welfare of the world, to, help sentient other living beings along the path to enlightenment, to help them even in some, ordinary way now. So when we change that paradigm, when our goal in a situation is different, okay, then it becomes much more difficult to have problems. So in everything that we experience, everything that we do, there's always something to learn. If we approach life with that my purpose in this situation is to learn something that in the end of the day will be useful for myself and for others, then we're never going to have a problem, because in every situation we can learn. When our focus becomes on our own training and our own practice, then our focus stops being to make other people change and make other people different so that they stop causing our problems, because we realize at some level that we can't. Okay? The transformation of the problems starts here with this one. Okay? And it starts with looking at our reactions to the situations that we're in, and really being able to look honestly at our reactions, not paint them over, not be sweet, okay, but really kind of be able to sit there and, okay, somebody's acting this way, why am I reacting in this? What do I think I need from this person that they aren't giving me? And how, where does contentment really come from? When you're content, do you get angry? No. When you're content, do you get jealous? When you're content, do you hold on to a grudge? When you're content, are you full of greed and craving? When you're content, do you hide your mistakes and pretend you don't have them? When you're content, do you pretend to be somebody you're not and impress people falsely? No. It's like when there's a feeling of contentment in our own mind, then kind of naturally we act with kindness. And a lot of, all those negative emotions and then the behaviors that they cause, they just get pacified automatically, because there's no dissatisfied, discontent feeling inside that motivates all of those other attitudes and behaviors. The kind of contentment that we're trying to develop is not the contentment of, I got my way, I got my needs met, the world's love me. It's not that. It's the contentment of us feeling okay about ourselves. It's come simply through our own spiritual practice by using our own mind. When Buddhism talks about contentment, we should not equate contentment with apathy. They're two different things. With apathy, we don't care. Okay? And you can be apathetic and discontent. Can't you? Yeah, and I think very often the nihilistic position that people go into in our society, of, well, it's all worthless, or it's just, you just sign it off. This is, it's discontent compounded with apathy. Okay, whereas contentment is a totally different ballgame. Okay, contentment is a feeling of well-being in ourselves. So we can have this contentment, some kind of self-confidence. And that will lead us to have compassion for others, rather than criticize them and pick them to bits, have compassion for them. and then based on that compassion, act against injustice or prejudice or intercede when there's a harmful situation. Okay? So that compassion can be just as strong of a motivator and a much wiser one than anger. And contentment, we can be content and we can still want to improve things in the future. Okay? There's a sense of well-being in ourselves that doesn't depend on how the world treats us. Okay, there's a sense of well-being in the self that comes through our own spiritual practice. So there's an inner sense of contentment that isn't dependent upon, getting what we want, having people like us and love us and appreciate us and tell us we're right and intelligent and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So, but on the basis of that inner sense of contentment, it doesn't mean that we eschew the rest of the world and block it out and fall into apathy, okay? Because again, motivated by compassion, we can still act to remedy injustice, remedy discrimination, but the way we do it is not going to be in an angry way. We can see, okay, I have a problem and somebody's treating me unfairly or there's discrimination against me or whatever. Have that sense of inner contentment. Yeah. But then actively work to change the situation, not because we hate the other people in it, but because we care about them. Okay? So you care about the person who's oppressing you. You care about the person whose political ideas you think are totally corrupt. Okay? You care about the person who's destroying the environment. You care about the person who's beating up your loved one. Okay? This is very opposite from our usual way of thinking, isn't it? Okay? But, our usual way of thinking hasn't gotten us anywhere, so we might as well try another way, okay? Because the thing is, if there's this conflict situation, we see the other person as an enemy, and we don't care about their well-being, okay? Then we're likely to inflict more harm out of anger, okay? So first of all, we're creating negative karma because we have a negative motivation of anger that has the intention to harm. Second of all, we destroy the other person's happiness. Because they're more miserable, then they're going to do more that harms us back. So we're just escalating the conflict. So we fight oppression or, injustice or ecological devastation or whatever out of care for the quote enemy, because we don't see them as an enemy that's out there that's inherently evil. We see them as another living being just like us who wants to be happy. So this takes, I'm just kind of explaining this using words, yeah, but to actually understand it, we need to sit. Okay? This isn't something that we're going to get through just intellectual understanding. We have to really sit, in our meditation practice and think about this. And then we need to examine our own mind. Be able to identify in our own mind when we're content and when we're discontent. Be able to identify in our mind when we're really accepting things and when we've gone into nihilism or apathy. We need to look in our own mind and identify, what does anger feel like? What does genuine compassion feel like? What is a positive aspiration? What does that feel like? So really understanding these things all depends on our own meditation practice. It's not dependent on intellectual understanding. Okay?
you know, in order to be able to work with, you know, a problem or a difficult situation, in the sense that it doesn't, you know, upset you or make you angry or like that, is, it's not so much that one part of it is having an antidote at the time, you know, or using a technique at the time, right? But I think far more important than that is that one has, you know, a fairly steady, continual, solid practice. You know, meditating on Lam-Rim every day, and not just one part of it, but, you know, gradually going through the whole Lam-Rim. Not choosing like one part that you like and not doing one part that you don't like, but consistently and continually meditating on the Lam-Rim, right? So that really is the basis, because if your mind is becoming more calm, more steady on a daily basis by meditating on the Lam-Rim, then when situations arise, there's less chance of being overwhelmed by a negative emotion such as anger or attachment or desire. You're much better or well prepared for the situation. Yeah? And so therefore, in one sense, it's almost more natural, because you see the situation, there's a better chance or more chance of seeing the situation for what it is, as opposed to what you're projecting or karmically projecting onto the situation. You know, somebody who's has been familiarizing themselves with impermanence day after day after day, you know, doing it, you know, properly, effectively, then somebody dies, or, you know, there's separation, or, you know, in terms of time, if the time changes or a situation changes, you know, it's much more easy to accept. It's much more easy to accept is because your mind is already prepared and more closer to reality, right? If you're making your mind more familiar with this reality that others exist, they have suffering, they don't want suffering, same as yourself, right? It's very sort of straightforward thing. It's reality, you know. Others exist, they're important, they have problems, they suffer, just like oneself, right? So if you're day after day familiarizing yourself with that, and then you come up with a situation, you know, a problem between yourself and some other person or some other people, then your attitude is already, well, there's less thinking of oneself and more thinking of the other person. So almost already you don't have a problem, because, you know, you'll find in most situations problems arise, or problem exists, or it appears to exist, is mainly because of ego, self-cherishing mind, attachment to one's own happiness. So that's really the basis of creating the problem. And it doesn't mean that outside there isn't a difficult situation, but inside there's not a problem in the sense of like it appearing like a problem, so that you're becoming emotional, you're becoming angry, you're becoming jealous, you're becoming some way upset, your mind is disturbed, right? So therefore, of course, that difficult situation is made very complicated because of the mind being disturbed inside. Whereas, you know, if there is a difficult situation, you know, you have every chance of resolving it if you really are concerned about that other person or what that other person is going through or experiencing. If you really want to help that other person, You know, if you really want to help that other person, there's not a problem. You know, the situation still can be difficult, but there's not really a problem. I mean, the mind, your mind, is not disturbed or unhappy.
Wonderful video. So, Lisa, can you make me a co-host?
Hey, Chris, can you put the, okay, there's the Kadampa view. That's what I wanted. There you go. I found you.
Got it. Good.
Okay. Okay, there we go.
Okay, give me a second. And okay, can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Wonderful. So I'm going to skip forward a few slides. So just a quick note, plan for today, time permitting. It's already 7:33. I don't want to keep everybody too long, first class. But anyways, we'll set our motivation. Do an
everybody
introduction to
see
this
that okay?
particular module.
Need to move up. Come on up.
Some recommended reading, homework, and then we'll dedicate, okay? So let's put our mind, let's just relax for a moment and let's bring our mind to the class, okay? So everybody should know about the 7-point meditation position, but if you're not familiar with it, if you're sitting on a chair, just make sure your feet are flat on the floor. If you're sitting down on the floor, make sure you're seated in a Vajra position, cross-legged, okay? Your arms are held loosely on your lap. Hands are resting 2 or 3 inches below your navel, and your right hand is over your left, like this, and your thumbs are touching each other, like a teardrop. And your head is slightly tilted forward. Some people like to look at the tip of their nose, or they could just look at the floor or gaze at the floor. Your jaw and mouth are relaxed. Tongue is resting lightly on the upper palate. Eyes, you can shut it in the beginning, but it's preferred to keep them slightly open. Okay, with that position, keep your back straight, okay? Not rigid, but not tilted, just kind of straight, like a stack of coins. So now relax and scan your body. Release any tension you may have. And then focus on your breath. Very natural, no force required. And as you breathe in and out, focus on either the cool tingling on your nostrils, or you can focus on your abdomen, going in and out as you inhale or exhale. And what you'll find is your mind may want to wander or go into another story. It's okay. Just observe it and tell your mind to come back to the breath. This develops concentration. It also calms a person down because we have one object to focus on. It's called concentration. So let's do that for about a minute or two, okay? So just focus on your breath. Now, with the mind somewhat calm, let's set our intention. Think about making this time worthwhile for ourselves and others, not just in this life, but in our future lives. It is important to listen with a good motivation. So turn your attention inward and think, just as I am stuck in this endless cycle of uncontrolled rebirth, so are all sentient beings. At present, I have met the Mahayana teachings and have the opportunity to practice. And so, the purpose of my life is not just my own welfare or my own future liberation. It is to bring each and every living being to full enlightenment. And therefore, I go for refuge from my heart to the Buddha, his teachings, the community, and by the merit of listening to these teachings, may I attain the state of Buddha to be able to lead all beings to that enlightenment state. Therefore, let's generate a wish to develop the potential of our mind to experience greater and greater happiness, to experience our true enlightened nature, and to develop the qualities that enable us to benefit every living being without exception. Okay, now bring your attention back to the class. So just to get us started, a little background, okay? So let me start with a brief explanation on what we are going to be covering and where it sits in the Buddha's teachings. So as we all know, about 2,500 years ago, Siddhartha Gautama, or the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, gave many, many teachings. I've heard 84,000. Okay, and the teachings then later on were divided into 3 baskets. Just for knowledge, one basket is called Vinaya, which is the discipline part, all the discipline for the monks and how the nuns and monks and what the discipline is like when you become one. The second basket was Sutra or discourses, teachings. The third was Abhidharma, which is more philosophical, higher mind training. The mind transformation or transforming problems sits with the sutra or the discourses. And within those discourses, you've heard we talk about the 2 wings, compassion and wisdom. You've heard of that. So this comes more from the compassion side. Though it incorporates both, it's more focused with bodhicitta, which comes from the compassion side. And what the teaching is called lojong. Okay, so lojongs are like aphorisms, statements, or sayings, okay, that expresses a principle, often in a memorable way. Okay, so it guides practitioners in developing both compassion and wisdom in their spiritual journey. Those are called lojongs. So let's talk about lojong a little bit further. Lo means mind or attitude. Okay, and jong means transforming or cleansing. Okay, so these aphorisms are sort of antidotes to undesired states of mind. Okay, so it originated obviously in Buddha's teachings, but it started really pulled together by Atisha, our teacher. In the Kadampa, if you're sitting in the Kadampa on the right-hand side, you see Atisha's statue. Later on, the practice was made more popular by this picture on the left, Chekawa Yeshe Dorje, a Kadampa Buddhist meditation master. And he really focused on training the mind in 7 points. This is part of your readings in Liberation in Palm of Your Hand. It's about the training of the mind in 7 points. It just puts you in a situation and you can see how you visualize it. Okay? But later on, the 8 transformation thoughts, the verses of transformation, were really made by Geshe Langri Thangpa. So he put all of this mind training in a succinct way, I should say. Okay, so when you see, if you go to your the prayer book, I think it's on page 161. It's got the whole meditation there on the actual practice of the 8 transformation thoughts. So that's your background on where it comes from. Okay, so what I like to start by saying that thought transformation, why do we need thought transformation? Let's start there. Why do we need it? And the reason would be, you heard today when Venerable Thupten Chodron was talking about it, that we somehow like to blame and self-cherish. Everything is me, I want it now. And so that I, that me, and self-cherishing causes all kind of delusions and problems. Okay? And so we need to transform that. We need to come out so we can become enlightened. We need to shift. We need to make a mental shift. So these particular teachings further our goals in developing and increasing bodhicitta. Okay? And then progress towards our enlightenment. So this bodhicitta is not just kindness and compassion in a simpler way. It is uncontrived, altruistic attitude that aims for enlightenment, not just for one's own happiness, but aiming to do so to bring welfare for each and every living being who has not yet attained it. Okay? So thought transformation, again, is very important technique to help us change, make the habitual tendencies that we've had due to our karma. And so it's like a paradigm shift. Okay, you're shifting the way you normally think. Now think about it. You've heard Geshe-la talk about the 12 links. And just a reminder from the classes you might have taken, this is what keeps us cycling through this samsara, right? And what are the 12 links? Just as a reminder. Because we have ignorance, not knowing how things exist, because we don't understand sometimes the 4 noble truths of cause and effect, karma, we develop this sense of strong I, which then has attachment. It's ignorant, it is attached, and creates aversion. So when the consciousness comes to this world, when we are born, we bring our delusions or the seeds of the karma with us. So our tendencies, right? Then we go through these 12 links, basically. Then you are born, you have name and form, then you develop your 6 senses, then you develop touch and contact, and then you develop feelings, pleasant feelings, neutral feelings, unpleasant feelings. Then slowly I like the pleasant ones, I don't like the unpleasant ones. So we start to crave good things, things that we like. Again, this propensity comes from where? The seeds from previous lives. The seeds we put in through mind, body, and speech. We've been creating karma. Those seeds, they have propensity. Okay, so when the karma ripens, these things come. This is what attracts you, even in the new life, right? So we crave, we grasp at those things, and that's what you're consumed by. So your mind is consumed by those habits, those tendencies. Then you go towards death again, and what you're carrying with you are those seeds and more karma we may have created, along with some good ones. right? So then you go again in cycle. You come back again with ignorance. You start with consciousness, get your name formed, consciousness is developed, contact, feelings, craving, grasping, die again. Keep going. And what Buddha is saying out of with Four Noble Truths is every cause has an effect. So there is suffering, there's a causes for it. We talked about the ignorance, attachment, aversion, ignorance, right? Then there is a path. In other words, we can get out of it. And there's a cause for that. Okay, and he has the way. So this is why we are transforming our mind. This whole teachings or practices that we are going to be talking about, the 8 verses of thought transformation, is not normal thinking for a lot of people. Why? Because we have delusions. We live in this dualistic world. As soon as we hear this for a few minutes, we kind of get it. And then we are back to our normal habits and tendencies, aren't we? It's so easy to do that because it's part of our habit. Okay? So that's why we are laying the foundation. And why? So let me just move on. Because of the 8 worldly concerns. Okay, these are the 4 pairs. We are attached to pleasure. We want to have an aversion for pain. We like to gain. We don't like loss. Third one is a big one. We all like people giving us credit, fame, and we'll avoid disgrace or criticism, correct? Praise and blame, same thing goes further. Fame and disgrace, praise and blame. So the left side is what we are after. The right side is we want to avoid. Now, this is not so plain and simple. I like to go a little further, okay? It's nothing wrong in wanting some happiness. There's nothing wrong in gaining some wealth. There's nothing wrong if somebody says, you did a great job. And so praise, fame, gain, pleasure is not totally wrong. It's not like this is bad. Okay, that's not what we are saying. What we are saying here is it depends on how you self-cherish. Look at your daily worldly dharma that we are crazily following and running after pleasure and gains and fame and praise, all for self-cherishing. Me and my happiness, my pleasure, my gain, my fame, my praise. Not everybody does that, but generally speaking, this is what the world is going after, right? And we cycle through this all the time. And this is why, because that I is looking for pleasure, makes me happy. I want to gain. I can't seem to see a feel for loss. I like fame. And so this is what happens with the I, it's self-cherishing. Now, let's turn this around. Say wealth, for example. We know that generosity is a cause for wealth. So if you were to gain pleasure by gaining wealth, instead of just self-cherishing, if you were to say, oh, you know what? I'll further my Dharma studies. I'll do retreat. Maybe I'll support the center. Maybe I'll support my family and myself a little bit more. Do extensive work for other sentient beings in a positive way. There is nothing wrong with that wealth. It is not now self-cherishing wealth. You're sharing a little bit with it. Okay, and remember the shelter that you have right now, the room, the food, everything you have is because of your past virtues. Something good you did last life. You know, we tend to focus on the negative, but think about the positive. Everything you have today, karma and good virtues, you got some nice things like you have food to eat. You met Dharma. You have clothes. Beautiful environment, pleasant sounds and music. And that comes from good morality, last life. So as you can see that even when we are talking about transforming problem, how the Lamrim is interweaved with everything we do. This is why you saw Venerable Rogers talk about Lamren in the introductory video. Very powerful. If you review Lamren, we talk about karma, how karma works. We talk about the suffering, the types of suffering. It talks about renunciation, and we'll talk about that in a moment. What are you renunciating from? It talks about developing bodhicitta in the third scope. And then we talk about wisdom, seeing reality as it exists, and how things are dependent originating, right? So you can see it weaves through the entire Lamrim. And it's very powerful. This entire, all modules in DB, if you take a topic, invariably is touching something else. And so important to know these things and learn and be a practitioner. Okay? So also, let me just make sure I cover everything. Okay, I got that. Okay, also on the opposite side, discomfort or unpleasant environment and difficult living circumstances, loud noise, harsh speech, harming others, all come from selfish, ignorant actions, miserliness, from using harsh speech or harming others. Again, the non-virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind. See, again, karma. So what it shows is that our mind is the source of suffering and happiness. And Four Noble Truth teaches us there are causes for our suffering. The root causes are in our mind, and prior habits and seeds and tendencies from karma causes us a problem. So when we say that to become a Mahayana practitioner, the three aspects of the path, you may have heard of it, that one must renunciate, we must understand some level of emptiness and develop bodhicitta. So when we talk about renunciation, what are we talking about? Are we talking about running away in some cave, renunciating your car, home, wearing nice clothes, sofas, TVs? No. It's renunciating from self-cherishing mind. Just me, 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 me. Open it up, make it a little broad. Look at other world. You know, I was just thinking about it as I was preparing for this. Even a small company CEO, if there's a good CEO, he's not thinking about I like you and I hate you and I don't like you. He's looking to better the entire company. A good, I shouldn't use these words, but a good leader, I would say neutral way, is looking for the welfare of the larger good, right? So in that way, when we are developing this on our spiritual path and we are renunciating, what we are renunciating is this graspingness, this self-cherishing, and develop this mindset to benefit others. And there's many, many reasons. This whole teaching actually comes from the third scope of developing equanimity and bodhicitta. Okay, so think about that. It's very difficult sometimes to even, the first thing that mind is not ready for it because we live in a conventional world. We have not been a big practitioners of this. So when you start practicing and developing this, start small. And like Geshe-la says, start with yourself, compassion, family members, and then increase and have a wish to become enlightened to benefit others. That's a beautiful wish. But you can do some things now. And that leads to your 6 perfections in the third scope, right? So think about it. We talked about generosity. Okay, it's not always about giving money, your time, being generous with your wealth, helping other sentient beings. Could be anything. If you may be helping ASPCA or people who are hungry. Okay, maybe giving it to a center like ours so more people can learn these things, all positive things. Also, it's not saying that we need to be martyrs and you don't have $5 but you want to give 6. No. Do what is practical. Okay, but your heart is in that. That's a good thought in it. You being is not about just sell everything and I'm going to be generous. That's not what we are talking about, okay? We are talking about just being fair about it and being generous in general. How about morality? It's the second perfection. Okay? Morality of restraint, for example, not doing bad harm to others, not doing bad things. And how about the third morality, benefiting others? Here comes bodhicitta again. How about patience? Third one. Okay, when I is self-cherishing, it wants the happiness now. You saw Venerable Thupten children said, I don't really want happiness, I want it now. That's what we think about it. Can't wait. So have patience. We talk about joyful effort, doing these things with little joy. Okay, and then the last two, of course, get into concentration and developing your meditation focus. But you can see the entire Lamrim is weaved into this. And why am I talking about this? Is because when you first hear the 8 verses of thought transformation, our mind says, that doesn't sound right to me. You'll see that. But when you really deeply think, okay, how we conventionally think and what is the ultimate nature, what are we driving towards, the Buddha nature, the ultimate reality, the absolute being, then you will start to understand what Buddha is trying to say. And if what we have right now is not working and you're still causing anxiousness, if fear, the lack of hope, some depression, anger, all these things, then Buddha is saying you have to shift that. So that's a paradigm shift. You have to transform your negative emotions, develop selfless attitude, and then achieve enlightenment to benefit others. So the root text we'll be covering is the 8 verses of thought transformation. So I think I've spoken about this. So the practitioners are guided to hold others dear. And we are going to learn to transform obstacles into spiritual practice. And wisdom says, view all phenomena as illusory. Why? It's a projection of your mind. If your mind likes something, it's going to see the most beautiful thing in front of you. If it doesn't like it, it's not going to like it, right? It's all in your mind. We create our reality. So, and think about when you're thinking about understand how these 8 worldly concerns together with self-cherishing has kept us so trapped for so long. So now we can train to give up and desire for them. We can learn to use our wisdom and compassion to bring a genuine mind renunciation. And just we want to be mindful of how slowly and steadily we develop and transform our mind. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay. I couldn't help it. I was looking at one of our Facebook and this came up as I was also preparing on the side for this, and I thought it was appropriate. If you can't change a situation, change the way you choose to see them. And I think we heard a little bit of that from Venerable Thupten children. You know, we have a tendency to blame others, but is it okay if you're on a spiritual path, we see it differently? So let's talk about the 8 verses of thought transformation. I'm not going to talk about all 8. We're going to talk about the first one. I think we've already kind of laid the foundation that we need to develop bodhicitta, right? And these 8 verses are very powerful to think about and use when you are with others on different situations, when difficult things are happening. Each of the verses seem opposite to the way you would normally think from the worldly point of view. Okay, it turns you around, it turns around the normal thinking, or normal worldly reaction, and it challenges your tendencies. Okay, So let's take a look at that. Determined to obtain the greatest possible benefit from all sentient beings who are most precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, I shall hold them most dear at all times. Remember, we depend on each other. Remember the food you eat, the clothes you wear, the TV you have, the job you have, the education you got. Everything is dependent on somebody else. Yes, you worked hard for it, but somebody grew your apples, somebody packaged them, somebody brought to you, somebody hired you, you earned the money, you paid for it. I mean, clothes you wear, we are dependent on each other. Our parents taught us how to walk, how to talk, how to keep us safe. So that's why we say mother sentient beings. Okay, and we need to not only look at what makes me happy right now, but as a Buddha mind, see the larger with a broad brush of how you want everybody to be happy. I have money, but it would be nice if everybody else was rich. I have a beautiful home. I wish everybody had a good home. Nobody should be living on the street. It's a great wish. It's changing your mind, the way you think. I won't go into all 8 today. We'll cover like maybe 3 next time, 2 the following, and 2 the following. So first one we've kind of covered with bodhicitta. Okay, sorry. These are the 8. So here's the first one: determined to obtain greatest possible benefit from all sentient beings who are most precious than a wishful jewel, I shall hold them dear at all times. I'll talk about recommended readings. Okay, so the readings, of course, you should have it through your links. The 8 verses of thought transformation by His Holiness. You don't have to read them all. It's a couple of pages, but the first 2 pages and 4 lines on the 3rd page is the first thought transformation verse. Okay? I want you to read that. It's very nice, 3 or 4 paragraphs, not too much details in there. Of course, you can always choose to read more, but that's all I'm asking. Now, one more thing, there are some books recommended. I don't have all of them, but I do have Transforming Problems by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Transforming Problems into Happiness. I'm also reading The Kindness and Clarity and Insight by His Holiness, and there's a whole chapter on 8 verses of training the mind. Okay. We also have Liberation in Palm of Your Hand, depending on the version you have. There's a very nice teachings on mind transformation. So you can take a look at some of those things. And all I'm asking for homework, besides reading this 8 verses of thought transformation, the first piece, is to memorize the first one. And next time when we come, we'll focus on the next 2 or 3, and then we'll try to see if we can memorize those. And then we start using these when you are out in a real situation. Okay? So the first one that we talked about today, when you're out and about, okay, sorry, jumps. I don't know why it's jumping. Think about why human beings and sentient beings, that's not only humans, sentient beings, period, are precious, how they help us, and what can we do to not have negative mind towards them and develop a true compassion. Okay. Please contemplate the meaning and ways you can incorporate that into your daily life. That's not a lot to ask. Okay? So let's dedicate really quickly. This is a very short dedication. Give me 1 second. So due to these merits, may I come to hold all beings as precious and dear, quickly realize bodhicitta, go on to attain the state of Buddha, and lead all sentient beings to that enlightened state. Okay. I'd like to also say one more thing, and I missed it, but the 17th Karmapa said this. Okay, and I'd like to end with that. This verse, the first one of thought transformation, teaches us how to connect with all living beings who share this planet with us. It is critical to know how to relate with others in a compassionate and a dharmic way. If we harm them, it will only lead to our own suffering. On the other hand, if we can generate bodhicitta and respond to them in a harmonious way, that can bring us all to the level of Buddhahood or omniscience. In brief, what this verse teaches us is that attaining full awakening depends on other living beings. The attitude of wishing to benefit them opens the path and brings us to enlightenment. Therefore, those who seek complete realization should value others and see them as supreme. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamid. Just a reminder that for those of you here in the Gampa, the verses are on page 161 of the Gold Prayer Book. So if you did want to memorize that first verse, you can take a picture of it. That's kind of the way I did. For those of you online, you can find the 8 verses at the FPMT website also.
All right, well, all I can say is think about this.
161. Yeah. Okay. Will you stop sharing for just a moment,
Okay, sure.
Hamid? Did anybody have any questions here in the Gampa, or if you have any online, just feel free to unmute. Hamid is available to also by email, right, Hamid?
Yes, email. I think it's HP Namaste, NAMASTE at proton, PROTON.me. HP Namaste at proton.me. And most of you should have my telephone numbers. And if you have a question that is really like you want to have a private question, you can always call me, or at the last class, we can put some questions together and have a session on just question and answer. I can even come in, no problem at all. Because as you're contemplating, some things will come up. Because this is opposite the way we think sometimes. So some things will come and say, how do I deal with this? How do I deal with that? We can talk through that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hamid. I'll be happy to pass any questions on to him as well, if you want to get in touch with me. Okay.
I do not have his phone number.
Okay. Well, I'll get it for you.
Thank you.
I'll get it to you, Linda. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thanks,
Good night,
everyone.
guys.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Thank you, Hamid. Thank you.